you understand that your lungs are dependent on Allah. When you inhale, your lungs ask permission from Allah. When you exhale, they ask permission from Allah. So when someone says, like Christopher Hitchens, a really idiotic academic, who used to be good, he used to be Palestinian until 9/11, when he says that the God is he's a fake and this and that, the very breath he's using to say that, those lungs have already asked permission from Allah. That's how stupid he is. His lungs are dependent on Allah, and he's using that breath to reject Allah. Do you understand? But all this makes sense once we actually have education. An education that is not about what do I have to do to get a good salary. It's about how do I get to know myself by learning this stuff. Okay? When you go into education, find a class that you love. Because for me it was English. Okay? Yeah, I took all those calc and bio and chemistry and all that stuff. But I knew very early on that that's not my college, the sciences. Could I do it? Yeah, I'm brown. Yeah, I could do it. But was it my calling? No. Was I better at it? Maybe I was equally good at both. Okay, but you have to find what you're best at. And once you start doing what you're passionate about, then you start to get to know yourself. As long as you're doing what you're not passionate about, but you think it's the only way to make money, you're just wasting your life. That's it. And you're never going to get to know yourself. And you've spent your life walking to someone else's drumbeat, and you've never taken a step on your own. You've never thought on your own. Okay, so let me give you an example. This is what we were talking about last night. Okay, go ahead. Okay. When you're in junior high, I'll give you an example of why I became so angry with education. When I was in junior high, or middle school, teachers were like, if you forget to write your name on your paper in high school, they'll give you a 0. If you do this, they'll do this. And it was all lies. And then we got to high school, and they're like, our whole life in junior high, we were trying to do well so we could get into honors classes in high school, right? And then when we were in high school, it was all about taking AP classes, doing well on SAT. That stuff is important, don't get me wrong. My goal was I'm always going to get A's, but I'm still going to beat the system, okay? But I'll explain in a second how. Actually, beating the system is the way you get it, if you want to know. But, okay, so in high school, what was the point? Always getting into those AP classes, making sure your GPA is strong. How many of you guys still have class rank? You guys still do that? Okay, so it's all about competition with fellow students, not really helping people out, competing generally. That's the general culture. This is exception. And then the goal was what? Getting to a good college. It's like, if you can make it there, then you've made it, right? And that's considered actually, of all the steps in education, getting to a good college is the most important one. So once you get there, you've made it. Okay, whatever. You do all that, you're like people, do you guys know people in high school that only do things so they can write it on their application later in college? Yes. No one wants to do National Honor Society, no one wants to do half that stuff, right? Key clubs, who the heck wants to do key club? What is key club? Go at 7 a.m. and eat donuts? Okay, so you can make it meaningful. Wait, you can make it meaningful. I'm not saying there's no good in it. But a lot of people do that just for application, right? Now, then you get into college. This is where some of you may not have been there yet. And I used to think like, okay, high school sucks. When you get into college, you'll be like you're in ancient Greece or something. Everyone's walking around saying smart things to each other. No. College is worse. College, you're sitting around and people are like, I need to get this summer if I don't get an internship, I won't be able to get another internship, I won't be able to get my first job interview, and I won't be able to get a job. Every class they take, they're like, oh, how is this going to look to the people who are going to hire me? And then the classes themselves are not teaching any original thoughts. You know what research, have you guys done research papers? Yeah. How many of you actually write something unique? I don't want an answer. Even if you raise your hand, I don't believe you. Research paper in America, hopefully Canadians you guys have a little better, but I don't think you do. Research paper in America is not, research paper is supposed to be, you read all this stuff, and they're like, I read all these books, I have an original idea, let me write it using these books. But when you write a research paper, what do? This is what I want to write about. You already have your arguments, you're not really researching. Let me find some quotes in other people's writings that support my claim, right or wrong. That's not research. That's just summarizing other people's ideas. And until I went to a good college, even there, I never read. I was an English major, so everyone would have me edit their papers. No one ever wrote an original thought in college. I read hundreds of papers. Everyone said, oh, Federson says this, Taylor says this. I disagree with Taylor. I agree with Federson. If you balance both ideas, you get a new paradigm of thought. It doesn't mean anything. It's a stupid, big word that you're throwing other people's ideas to. An original thought is something I tried out when I finally got sick of all this. I wrote a paper, it was probably my first paper where I wrote something original, and what I did was, you know Saad is?
Yeah.
Saad was this guy of the Brotherhood movement in Egypt. You know Malcolm X is, right? So I was reading, and I found, this is an example of an original thought, okay? It's something we should be striving for when we write papers. And believe me, when you write an original thought, your professor will go crazy. In high school, they won't. They'll be like, oh, your grammar's wrong, you're flowing, you know, whatever, all this stupid stuff. But if they will love you because they've never read that before. Okay? Even their own dissertation, they're becoming PhDs with an original. So I found out that Malcolm X, in 1968, when he was traveling the Muslim world, right? He went to Egypt and he gave a speech in front of the Muslim Brotherhood. At that time, Sayyid Qutb, the famous scholar, was still alive. Okay? So I was like, there is no way Malcolm X went to Egypt, spoke to the Brotherhood, and he didn't meet Sayyid Qutb. And this has never been written about before, that Malcolm met Sayyid Qutb. Okay? So then I started researching, and because it's original, there's no one who has ever said it. So then how do you research? Then I started looking at all the things Malcolm X said before that trip and everything he said after that trip. So I went to all his speeches before that date, all his speeches after. And I found that he changed a lot of his ideas after that visit to Egypt. So I'm like, wait a second. Where did these new ideas come from? And suddenly, before he was speaking like African American rhetoric about whites and stuff, suddenly he was talking about East and the West. And that's what Sayyid Qutb was writing about. Okay? And then I looked at all of Sayyid Qutb's ideas and all of Malcolm's ideas, and I realized they were all the same. Every time that Malcolm would say the white man, Sayyid Qutb had said the West and Islam. You understand? So then I made an argument that Malcolm and Sayyid Qutb had exchanged ideas. That's an original thought. Yes, I used books and articles, but I didn't do it just to summarize what they were saying. I was actually making a unique argument that had never been made before. You understand what I'm saying? That paper, when a professor reads that, they'll be like, okay, I want to write a recommendation for you. I want you to work for me. I want you to get an A. You know, that's real education. That's not some stupid little thing we do when we write research papers to get A's. Yeah, go ahead. That's a really weird stretch. You're like going around your head. Okay. Sometimes people go like this. You're, okay. Monkey, do you see? How do you know? Keep your hand up. No? Anyways, is that like some Sudanese like culture or something? Yeah, hold on. Alright, you guys get what I'm saying then? Okay, but then you get to college and it's all about getting a good job. Then you get a good job and it's all about promotion. And now you're 45 years old and you haven't done anything in your life. Because your whole life, and this is what we talked about the other day, where is the highest suicide rate in the world?
America.
Number one is Switzerland. All they have there is Swiss cheese, Swiss army knife. They have not fought a modern war ever. These cats are just chilling with banks and stuff, peeing around, eating shit. Okay. Anyways. Nice. That chair is like my team. Okay. I don't mean. Okay. The reason they have the highest suicide rate is this whole thing I'm talking about, education, just to get to the next level, it doesn't make you feel good about yourself. It makes you hate yourself, right or wrong. Who's seen Office Space? When you get a job, life is like that. You go in at 9 a.m. and you're like looking, school is actually better than the job, in my opinion. You're looking at the clock, you're like, oh my God, it's still 11 o'clock. You gotta be there till 6. When you start working, you gotta sit until 8 or 9. Okay? You're just like cranking things into a computer in a little cubicle. It's completely unnatural. Human beings weren't meant to live like this. But we're doing it because we want a good salary. But you know what the problem is? By the time you can actually enjoy your money, your kids have already taken it all. There's a man, you know, have you guys ever been to Jimmy John's restaurant? Jimmy John's you guys have not been to Jimmy John's? Yeah. Okay, Jimmy John's has this poster on his wall. I love Jimmy John's. Great story. Doesn't it? Huh? What's my favorite sandwich? My favorite sandwich is the turkey whatever. Which one do you like? Is it side topic?
I'll watch
Yeah,
this video.
turkey dog.
I'm gonna laugh.
We're both intelligent.
Taking a video. I'm gonna get the
We'll
laugh
talk
out of it
later.
later.